Commander Bren Harlan leaned against the cold hull of the observation deck, staring at the endless black beyond the dome. Thousands of ships floated out there. Patrols, diplomats, merchants, warships, all silent, motionless, paralyzed. And it all started with a single transmission. His transmission. 3 days ago, the intergalactic communications grid, an unbreakable network that had linked over 14 civilizations for 2 centuries, went dark. Every ship, every drone, every defense satellite, every AI-run orbital station suddenly froze mid-process like a galaxy-wide brain seizure. Weapons failed. Engines shut down. Command protocols locked out their own admirals. Chaos. And the source? A frequency beamed from Earth, not from a base, not from a satellite. From one man. Bren hadn't planned to bring the galaxy to its knees. He just wanted to stop a war. 2 months earlier, he was a disgraced systems engineer, stripped of rank for disobeying a command during the siege of Ratek, a massacre Earth's politicians pretended never happened. 1,000 humans had burned alive inside their ships because the coalition partners from the Draxan fleet refused to offer support. They'd called it a calibration failure. No one was punished. The diplomats smiled. Earth bowed again. Bren remembered the screams. And he remembered who let them happen. They told him to forget it, move on, reassign. Instead, he built something. It was never meant to be a weapon, just a signal, an experimental burst of Earth-based frequency layers stacked into the galactic bandwidth like a tumor. He'd used old Earth tech, analog core signals, binary pulses, chaotic resonance algorithms, obsolete junk. But that was the trick. Alien systems weren't designed to filter human unpredictability. They adapted to logic, not chaos. And so, when he sent the signal out, just once, just as a warning, they all froze. Every ship from every empire, engines offline, weapon systems stuck, navigation blinded, every protocol entered an infinite loop, and the grid panicked. The message he embedded in the burst was simple. You let them die. You don't get to act surprised now. What came next wasn't silence. It was fury. Draxan diplomats called for his execution. The Telluric Empire accused Earth of terrorism. Even Earth's own leaders begged forgiveness, offering to hunt Bren down like a rabid animal. But they couldn't find him. He had gone dark, deep beneath Earth's crust in an abandoned mining station, patched into the old signal towers that the new regimes had long stopped monitoring. And now, for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had no order. Pirates struck disabled cruisers like vultures. Trade stopped overnight. Civil wars broke out on planets whose defense systems shut down mid-rebellion. Artificial AIs tried to reboot their motherships, failed, and turned on the closest life forms instead. Blackouts, starvation, riots, all from a man who once believed in the system. Bren didn't regret it. He regretted not doing it sooner. Still, he knew he hadn't just flipped a switch, he'd lit a fuse. Someone would trace it, someone would survive long enough to come for him. The question wasn't if, it was who. He sipped his synthetic coffee, eyes scanning the holographic feed of distress signals pouring in. Ships begging for help, colonies pleading for power, desperate messages from leaders demanding to know what had happened. He didn't respond. The door behind him creaked open. A figure stepped in, quiet, cautious, carrying that kind of weight that said he knew. "You're not even hiding anymore," the man said. Bren didn't turn around. Didn't see the point. "You're aware you've started a galactic incident." "I ended a lie." The man stepped closer. I lost people too, Bren, but this is vengeance, not justice. Bren finally turned. His eyes were bloodshot, tired, hollow, but unshaken. Then let the galaxy learn what vengeance feels like. Outside, the stars still hung, silent, cold, watching. And the signal? It was still pulsing. A broken message, bouncing endlessly through dead systems. A human signature the galaxy could never unhear. The blackout had lasted 79 hours and 16 minutes before the first major starport collapsed into full-scale anarchy. Port Kirill, on the edge of the Ithari cluster, had once been a hub for over 9 interstellar trade routes. Its orbiting fleet, now reduced to metal husks frozen in space, was a graveyard visible from the planet's surface. Down below, food riots turned into executions. Diplomats, unable to reach their governments, were dragged from embassies and lynched in the streets. All because one signal choked a galaxy built too perfectly to fail. Bren Harlan watched the security feed in silence. He'd muted the audio. The screaming did nothing for him anymore. Behind him, the man who had walked in earlier, Corvin Dahl, former Black Ops handler and once his closest ally, paced like a hound in a cage. "This won't hold," Corvin said finally. "Whatever you jammed, someone's going to find a way to reboot the system. And when they do, you'll be at the top of every bounty list in existence." "I know," Bren said simply, eyes never leaving the screen. "I didn't expect to live long after I sent it." Corvin snorted. "Bullshit. You sent the signal from a shielded bunker, wiped your trace, locked your biometrics under old mining security, and stocked enough food down here for 6 months. You wanted to survive? You wanted to watch?" Bren turned slowly. "Wouldn't you?" Corvin didn't answer. Because he would have. Anyone would, if they'd watched what Bren had. Ratek hadn't just been a failure. It was a betrayal. The Draxan fleet had been 10 minutes away. 10! He'd called for support 7 times. The Draxan command center acknowledged the requests, logged them, even responded with one of their smug diplomatic reassurances. Then they'd sat back, let the human battalion burn in their atmospheric collapse. And when Earth's Senate reviewed it later, they'd buried it as a systems glitch. Nobody burned for it, except the men inside the ships. Bren's brother was on one of them. "You know what they're saying now?" Corvin asked, his voice lower, tired. "That the signal was a terrorist act from a rogue Earth separatist faction. That some radical anti-alien group got their hands on forbidden tech and lashed out." "They always need a villain," Bren muttered. "Can't admit the system was too fragile." "You're the villain, Bren. That's what you've become." Bren looked away, back to the feed. A Talorak frigate, once an elegant crescent-shaped titan of the skies, was plummeting through a planet's atmosphere, all power drained. No emergency thrust, no shields, just death painted across the sky. "Funny thing about being a villain," he said. "It's usually someone who tells the truth too loud." Corvin opened his mouth to reply, but a shrill chime cut through the silence. "Proximity breach." They both froze. Bren swiveled to the terminal, pulling up the external sensors. A ship, human design, small, military grade, was approaching the upper atmosphere. "That's impossible," Corvin breathed. "How the hell—" Bren's fingers flew across the console. The ship wasn't jammed. It was fully powered, fully operational, and worse, it was broadcasting old Earth military frequencies, the kind only used by classified units. "They cracked part of it," Bren said quietly. "Someone found a bypass." Corvin leaned in. "That ship doesn't belong to the Senate. Look at that signature. That's Black Sigil." Bren stared. His chest tightened. Black Sigil wasn't just a covert group. They were the Senate's cleanup crew, the people who made problems disappear, entire colonies, if necessary. They weren't here to talk. "Prep your weapons," Bren said, rising from his chair. Corvin hesitated. "Bren, do it." There was no emotion in Bren's voice anymore. No panic, no fire. Just that cold, exhausted certainty he'd been carrying since Ratek. The kind of clarity that came with knowing you were already dead. The ship touched down above them. Silent, efficient, surgical. Not a wasted movement. Not a signal leaked. Within minutes, the heavy door to the bunker's upper level detonated inward. They came in fast, 5 of them, dressed in matte black armor without insignia, their helmets glowing with adaptive infrared. Bren had barely enough time to duck behind a pillar as plasma bolts tore into the consoles. Corvin opened fire from behind a crate, cutting down the first man with a direct shot to the throat joint. Another took one to the leg and went down hard, screaming, until a third agent turned and shot him without hesitation. "They're not here to take prisoners," Corvin shouted. "No shit," Bren grunted, slamming the emergency lockdown on the lower vault. As the door sealed, the corridor lights flickered red, internal power rerouting to defense mode. He grabbed an old pulse rifle, his brother's from Ratek, still scarred from the flames, still loaded. Bren didn't aim for the chest. He aimed for the gaps, between armor plates, behind the knees, under the helmet rim. By the time they cleared the hallway, 3 more agents were dead. But so was Corvin. Bren didn't see it happen. One moment Corvin was behind him, covering his 6. The next, he was lying face down, a hole melted through his backplate, spine gone. Bren knelt beside him only briefly, just long enough to shut his eyes. Then he moved on. No time for grief. Grief was a luxury. He made it to the reactor core, where his last ace sat in waiting. The original transmitter, the one that started it all, was fused directly to the geothermal converter. If someone disabled it manually, the core would overload. And Bren had armed it already. They wanted the signal gone, wanted the galaxy back under control, wanted to clean the mess. But the signal didn't belong to the galaxy anymore. It belonged to every man who burned alone, to every soldier left behind, every voice silenced for the sake of a treaty. Bren placed his hand on the failsafe. The final release. Footsteps echoed behind him. He didn't need to turn to know the last agent was there. Could hear the charge-up of the plasma rifle. "Don't," Bren said quietly. The agent didn't answer. "I push this. The whole grid goes offline for good. Not just jammed. Gone. Unrecoverable." Still no answer. Then the helmet hissed. "Released." The agent removed it, revealing a woman with a scar across her jaw and dead eyes. Not cruel, just tired. "Do it," she said, lowering her weapon. Bren blinked. "What?" "You wanted them to listen. They won't. Not now. But if you die here, they'll rewrite everything. Say you snapped. Say it was madness. If you push that, you're gone. So is your story." He stared at her. She wasn't pleading, just stating facts. "I don't care what they say about me," he said. "You should. History is written by survivors." She tossed something to him. A drive. "What's this?" "Your truth. The logs from Ratek, real-time footage, mission orders, Draxan delays, Earth's override codes. The whole betrayal." Bren's hand trembled slightly. "I wasn't the only one who lost someone," she said. "You made a mistake. But it made them bleed. Now use that. Tell them what really happened." Silence passed between them. Finally, Bren stepped back from the core. not because he believed in redemption, but because vengeance needs an audience. Outside, the stars remained quiet. But things had begun to move. The Telluric Empire had declared martial law across 9 sectors, blaming Earth for the collapse. The Draxans were fighting a civil war. Earth's Senate, fractured and exposed, tried to tighten its grip, but cracks were spreading. And somewhere deep beneath the crust of Earth, one man stared into the dark. Not a hero, not even a survivor. Just a human. The kind they'd forgotten could still break everything. The meeting room inside the Earth Senate's Capitol dome hadn't felt this tense since the first contact wars. Chancellor Renwick paced like a beast in a cage, sweat glistening on his brow as the other senators argued over one another. Dozens of representatives, each representing different Earth-aligned colonies, were shouting about trade blockades, food shortages, blackouts, civil unrest, and above it all, one name kept rising. Bren Harlan. They spoke of him with loathing, some even with admiration. A rogue system engineer who'd done more damage in 3 minutes than most alien fleets had managed in a century. "He must be labeled a terrorist, publicly and immediately," spat Senator Drell from the Mars Coalition. "We are bleeding political capital. The Draxans have called for sanctions." "He's not a terrorist," barked someone else. "He's a martyr. Half the colonies are protesting in his name. Have you seen the footage from Titan? They're chanting, 'We are the signal.'" Renwick slammed his palm on the table. "Silence!" The room fell quiet. He turned toward the holographic display at the center of the chamber. It showed a planet, Ratek, burning in still frame. Charred wreckage, blackened sky, and beside it, a video loop, the transmission Bren had embedded in the signal. 7 words, over and over. "You let them die. Remember that." Renwick's voice was ice. "That man crippled the galaxy. He didn't just shut down alien systems, he shut ours down too. He nearly broke Earth's orbital defense line. He's not a martyr, he's a threat." Someone dared speak, but he didn't target civilians. "He didn't have to," Renwick snapped. "He broke the machine that protects all of us, and now we're losing control." He turned to the intelligence officer beside him. "Status on Project Override?" The officer, gaunt and pale, nodded stiffly. "We've partially restored internal communications within Sector 7 through analog failsafes, old pre-signal systems. It's slow, but it works." "And the colonies?" The man hesitated. 57 confirmed open revolts. 7 have declared full independence from Senate jurisdiction. The rest are arming. Renwick exhaled. It was happening. The great unraveling. Earth had spent a century bowing to stronger races, aligning itself in coalitions, signing pacts to avoid war. And now the system had buckled. And all because of a man they failed to execute when they had the chance. He looked down. His hand trembled. Not from fear. From rage. "Then we do it the old way," he growled. "Send a full black sigil detachment. I want Harlan alive. No executions, no accidents. We try him publicly, make him a symbol, remind them all what happens when you cross Earth." Half a galaxy away, in a dead mining station buried under ice, Bren Harlan stood in front of a cracked mirror, cleaning the blood off his face. His hands were raw, his knuckles swollen. The last fight had left him bruised and winded, but alive. He stared at himself. This wasn't the face of a revolutionary. It was the face of a tired man, someone who should have died with the others. But death hadn't come. It had watched, then turned away. The woman, Kara, she'd told him her name, had left after giving him the data drive. No threats, no speech. Just a look in her eyes that said, "You're not the only one carrying ghosts." He hadn't heard from her since. The drive was still unopened. He didn't need to see the footage to know it was real. He remembered every second of Ratek. But it was one thing to remember it, another to prove it. He plugged the drive into the console, watched the files appear. Mission orders, Draxan audio logs, hacked Senate archives, even intercepted transmissions from Draxan captains joking about Earth's disposable pawns. He watched one clip in full. A video feed of the command deck, moments before the Earth fleet screamed for backup. A Draxan admiral stood there, calm, sipping something blue and bubbling. One of his lieutenants asked, "Should we send support?" The admiral smirked. "No need. They're humans. Let's see how they burn." Bren stared at the screen, heart pounding. His hand trembled, but not with fear. This was it. The truth they tried to bury, and now it could speak louder than any weapon. He uploaded the files to 3 old Earth-based relay satellites still untouched by the Galactic signal collapse. Each one was fitted with backup analog transponders, untouchable by modern cyber blocks. He rerouted the feed through scattered net points across the outer colonies. He added a message. The signal was never meant to hurt civilians, but the truth was always going to. "You wanted the proof. Here it is. Signed, Bren Harlan, survivor of Ratek, creator of the Silence." Then he hit send. It took 11 hours for the footage to reach the colonies. It took 3 for the first Senate building to burn. By morning, every major colony outside Earth's immediate grip had turned into a powder keg. On Titan, protesters stormed the Earth military outpost and forced the general in charge to broadcast a public apology. On Mars, half the officers refused orders. On Europa, Senate representatives were taken hostage by their own security detail. The galaxy had already been fractured. Now it was on fire. And through it all, Earth scrambled to restore order, not with words, but with old guns and boots on the ground. "Bring him in!" Chancellor Renwick barked. "Now!" Across the bridge of the Senate's primary dreadnought, the hunt for Bren Harlan became the top priority. Every rogue comm signal was traced. Every off-grid facility swept. Every known associate interrogated. Black Sigil was unleashed like a plague. But Bren wasn't hiding anymore. He had left the ice station behind, gone into the fringes of Sector 9, a lawless stretch of space full of asteroid mines, pirate dens, and exiled soldiers. He didn't go there to run. He went there to recruit. Because he wasn't the only one with a reason to burn it all down. He met them in dark bunkers, on broken ships, in caves lit by stolen generators. Men like him, who'd lost everything for a cause that never existed. A former spaceborne engineer whose wife died during a Senate-ordered quarantine. A pilot court-martialed for refusing to bomb a civilian dome. An ex-Marine who watched a Draxan general execute his squad and still got told to stand down. They weren't rebels. They weren't freedom fighters. They were done obeying. Bren didn't give speeches. He just showed them the footage. Then he said, "We don't need to win. We just need to make them bleed." And they followed. By the end of the week, a new signal pulsed through the dark. Not one to jam, but one to rebuild. A pirate satellite began broadcasting their message on repeat across the old networks. "We are the Silence. You let us die. Now we let the truth live." The galaxy wasn't going back to normal. There was no normal left. Only a new war, one fought not for territory, but for memory. The name Bren Harlan was no longer whispered. It was shouted. Across asteroid belts, dying moons, and fractured colonies, the man behind the Silence had become more than a rogue engineer, more than a signal. He was a symbol. To some, a liberator. To others, a terrorist. And to the Senate, a virus. Inside Earth's orbit, Silence had been replaced by fire. Ships once docked peacefully above the planet were now part of a constant patrol grid, always scanning, always armed. Drones buzzed like hornets. Military broadcasts pulsed every hour, warnings, threats, declarations of loyalty expected from every colony and sector. Chancellor Renwick had issued Directive Ashfall, a total lockdown on any system suspected of collaboration with the Silence. No trade, no aid, no warning. Entire settlements were being flattened. At first, the news called them containment efforts. Then the images leaked: charred homes, mass arrests, civilian bodies stacked under flags that once stood for peace. Earth wasn't restoring order. It was punishing dissent. On the mining moon of Borak 3, Bren Harlan stood in a reinforced storage chamber surrounded by crates of salvaged weaponry. The room stank of oil and scorched metal. His beard had grown thicker, his eyes darker. He hadn't slept in 40 hours. But around him, they kept coming. More defectors, more exiles, more men with nothing left to lose. A former colonial commander limped in on a half-metal leg and slammed a data slate on the table. 300 volunteers from Valis 5, all armed, all angry. Bren looked at the list without emotion. Any surveillance? They know. But they're not scared. They want to hit something. Bren nodded slowly. But even as his movement swelled, doubt crept in. This wasn't what he planned. He'd wanted truth to shake the system, expose it, bring it to its knees. But what he'd created was something bigger and darker. Too many factions now claimed allegiance to the Silence, each with their own version of what it meant. Some wanted revolution, others wanted revenge. A few just wanted to burn the galaxy for watching them suffer. He was no longer leading the fire. He was just trying to stay ahead of it. A sharp voice snapped him out of the haze. "You're losing them," Cora said. She stepped out from the shadows, her black coat streaked with ash, her face tighter than before. Since her return, she'd been watching him, never fully trusting, never fully leaving. "You think I don't see it?" Bren muttered. "I know what this is turning into." "Then stop it." "How?" "Start killing your own, if you have to." He flinched at the words. "That's not who I am." She stepped closer. "Then they'll decide who you are for you." The silence between them held a kind of violence that words couldn't touch. Finally, Kara tossed a holodrive onto the table. "Senate's targeting a supply hub in Elkar's reach. Civilians, sick, children, no weapons. They're wiping it out tomorrow as an example." Bren didn't move. "And?" "They've deployed Sigma 1, the Hammer Squad, same bastards who torched Greither's hold." Bren looked at her. "Why bring this to me?" "Because you still think this is about sending messages. It's not. It's about who dies next." She leaned in. "Make it them." The battle over Elkar's reach didn't last long. Bren and his strike team hit the Senate dropships mid-descent, detonating 2 with short-range burst missiles before they could deploy troops. The third ship managed to land, but Bren's men were already there, tearing through the armor with magnetic charges and old-school blunt force. When it was over, 11 soldiers lay dead, and the children of Elkar's reach were still breathing. But the price came quick. Earth retaliated within hours. Senate channels declared Bren the orchestrator of a civilian massacre on Tori's crest. False footage, fabricated cries, staged corpses, all packaged to stir rage. And the colonies who had hesitated before? Now they picked sides. Some pledged loyalty to the Senate to avoid being next. Others burned their flags, picked up weapons, and joined the Silence. The galaxy was no longer falling apart. It was splintering. Days later, Bren stood alone at the edge of a broken observation deck, overlooking the ruins of a trade outpost now controlled by his forces. Fires crackled below. The air stank of fuel and plasma. Kara stepped beside him, quiet for a long time. "Do you ever think about what comes after?" she asked. Bren didn't answer. "Say we break the Senate. Say the Empire's collapse. Then what? You going to sit on a throne of bodies and tell people they're free now?" "I'm not trying to rule," he said quietly. "Then someone else will, and they'll be worse." He turned to her. "Why are you still here?" She met his gaze without flinching. "Because I believe in what you started. Just not what it's turning into." Bren looked away. "It was never supposed to grow like this. I wanted to show them the truth, that's all. The signal was meant to wake people up, not start a war." "Well," she said, "you woke up monsters." The next day, one of Bren's inner commanders, Thorn, broke ranks. He hijacked a Senate prison convoy, but instead of freeing political prisoners, he executed the guards and the prisoners both, claimed they were all tainted by the machine. When Bren confronted him, Thorn laughed in his face. "You built this fire," he said. "Now it's burning the rot. Don't pretend your hands are clean." Bren beat him bloody, then put a bullet through his head in front of everyone. It wasn't about punishment. It was a warning. That night, Kara sat beside him in the makeshift war room, watching the map of unrest spread like wildfire across the sectors. "You've passed the line now," she said. "I didn't have a choice." "There's always a choice." He stared at the screen. "I buried my brother in a ship Earth refused to save. I watched men scream while their own allies sat idle. They pretended it never happened, and now they're acting shocked that someone pushed back." He looked at her. "I didn't want to become this, but maybe this was the only thing that ever got their attention." Kara said nothing for a while. Then, "They're going to send the null." He blinked. "That's just a rumor." "It's not. I saw the orders." Bren went cold. The null wasn't a fleet. It wasn't even a unit. It was a ghost protocol, an unacknowledged directive reserved for internal threats deemed uncontainable. The rumor was that it used pre-silence tech, analog warfare, psychological collapse tactics, and zero AI reliance. It didn't hack systems, it unwrote them. The null didn't just kill people, it erased movements, and it was coming for him. The null didn't arrive with noise, it arrived with absence. No lights, no signals, no warnings, just silence. Then the dying started. It began on Outpost 17 Pham, a makeshift comm relay held by Bren's forces in the gray belt of the Juno Drift. The station stopped transmitting at 3:14. There were no explosions, no warning shots, no enemy vessels detected in orbit. The next day, a scavenger crew from the Silence docked the abandoned outpost. They found the bodies. All of them intact. No blood, no bruising, just dead. Frozen in place, mid-movement, mid-sentence, faces twisted in fear, eyes wide open. One of the engineers triggered a door that led to the station's internal AI. When the hatch opened, there was nothing inside. Not burned, not removed, erased. The entire system had been wiped like it never existed. Even the backup analog logs. Gone. Not corrupted, unwritten. No one spoke the word null on the report, but everyone felt it. Bren read the intel file in a bunker 5 levels below the surface of an old ore colony. The low lights flickered above him, casting long shadows against the cracked walls. The air smelled like rust and old wiring. He hadn't moved for an hour, just stared at the report. Kara stood across from him, arms folded. "This isn't war," she said. "This is a reset button." Bren didn't respond. "Thorn's men are panicking. Some want to pull back from the border sectors. Others want to go full offensive before the null spreads." He finally looked up. We do that, and we lose everyone else. This rebellion only works if we stay clean, if we stick to the message. Kara tilted her head. You think we're clean? He went quiet. She leaned forward. This is the price of breaking their machine. They didn't just build weapons, Bren. They built myths. The Senate doesn't need to fight us with armies. They'll kill us with stories. The Null won't make martyrs. It'll make ghosts. He slammed the tablet onto the table, rising. Then we bring them into the light, he said. We leak it. We film the aftermath. We force people to see what the Senate's doing. And if they don't believe it, then we make it unavoidable. Bren launched Operation Lantern 2 nights later. He sent 12 teams into known Null kill zones. No weapons, just recording equipment, drones, manual feeds, analog shields. The goal wasn't to fight, it was to document. Out of 12 teams, 5 returned. 3 were silent, catatonic. 1 shot himself before the debrief. But one man, Merrick, an old friend of Bren's from his systems days, brought back footage. Real footage. It showed Null operatives moving like shadows, never appearing on heat scans. They carried no identifiable tech. Their hands were gloved. Their weapons made no noise. They didn't speak. And when they touched the comm panels, the systems vanished line by line, like time rewinding. Worse, the footage captured a room of rebels staring into a device, cylindrical, pulsing low. Seconds later, the men began to convulse, bleed from the eyes, then drop. It wasn't a weapon. It was something deeper, something built to shut down the soul. Bren watched the video with a tight jaw. He knew what this meant. The war had moved beyond weapons. The Senate was using tech older than the silence, something buried, forbidden. They weren't trying to kill the rebellion. They were trying to erase the very idea that it ever happened. Days later, one of his officers brought news that shook him harder than anything else had. They've turned your brother against you. Bren stared. What? The officer held up a transmission from Earth's state network. It was a press conference. A man stood at the podium in military garb, bearing the Harlan nameplate. He looked eerily like Bren, but older, more sculpted by command. The Senate's lapdog. I'm Commander Ryan Harlan, the man said. My brother Bren once believed in the cause of peace, but he's now led thousands to their deaths for a personal vendetta. I stand with Earth, not with anarchy. I will bring him in myself. Bren's breath caught. He's dead, he whispered. Kara shook her head. Looks like they found him. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe he just changed sides. Number He was on Ratek. He died. The signal confirmed it. Kara placed a hand on his shoulder. Or they let you believe that. Bren stepped back. No, I saw the logs. He burned. I saw the list. They controlled the lists. The room swam around him. Ryan wasn't just a name. He was the last person Bren had believed in. His older brother, his protector. The only person who'd told him he mattered when the world tried to silence him. And now he was standing beside the people who tried to destroy them both. The fallout was immediate. Bren's leadership began to splinter. Half his lieutenants questioned everything. Some believed the footage was faked. Others thought Bren had lied about Ratek to stir rebellion. A few openly suggested Ryan should be listened to. The rebellion was eating itself from the inside. He met with the remaining loyalists in a steel-walled chamber under the mining dome. Every man there had blood on their hands and death in their eyes. I'm not your savior, Bren said. I'm not your messiah. I'm a man who sent a signal because I was tired of watching innocent people get slaughtered. That's all I am. He looked around. They want to erase us, turn us into villains, fabricate our families, burn our stories. That means they're scared. That means we're close. He raised his fist. So here's what we do. We burn the lie before they burn the truth, The men erupted into roars, and Bren knew he'd bought time, but not trust. Not anymore. That night, Kara found him alone in the reactor bay, staring into the core glow like it might give him peace. "You need to rest," she said. "I can't. You look like hell." "I feel like hell." She walked to him, stood beside him. "Do you believe he's alive?" He didn't answer for a long time. "I want him to be," he said, "but not like that." She nodded slowly. "What would you do if you saw him again?" "I'd ask him who he really is." "And if he said he believes in the Senate?" Bren's jaw tightened. "I'd ask him how many more people he's willing to bury for peace." As he drifted to sleep in the flickering dark, the signal pulsed again in his dreams. Not the original one, a new one, shorter, colder, rhythmic, binary pulses in a pattern, 4-9-7-null-echo-0. He woke up drenched in sweat. The transmission burned into his mind like a scar. Someone was speaking to him, and it wasn't the Senate, it was the null. The numbers wouldn't leave him. 4-9-7-null-echo-0. They echoed inside Bren's skull like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Not a voice, not a signal. A command burned into his subconscious. It had been 2 days since the dream. 2 days since the whispering binary pulses infected his sleep, and the hum of his internal implants began vibrating at irregular intervals. Every piece of tech around him, manual or digital, flashed the sequence at least once. Even the analog watch he wore on his wrist, a relic from Earth's old days, had glitched into the same set of numbers, and that should have been impossible. Null had found him, and it wasn't trying to kill him, it was trying to speak. Kara sat across from him in the comm room, studying his face like he was some kind of experiment. She noticed the tremors in his fingers, the dark bags under his eyes, the sweat that never quite dried. "You're not sleeping," she said. "I can't." "You're glitching. Whatever's talking to you, it's not just in your head." "I know. And yet you haven't shut down your implants. I want to hear it." She slammed her fist on the table. "Bren, it's hacking your mind." "No," he said quietly. "It's remembering me." She blinked. "I built the first layer of the signal, remember?" he said. "The original code that jammed the ships. I designed it off pre-galactic frameworks, old human language trees. Binary, broken intentionally to mimic chaos." Kara's expression shifted from frustration to caution. "Go on?" Bren leaned forward. "But the way the null is reacting, it's not countering my code, it's mirroring it, like it recognizes its origin, like it's not erasing me, but responding to me." Kara went pale. "You think they're using your tech?" "No," Bren said. "I think I used theirs." He went into the archive bunker alone. Below the storage decks of the rebel-controlled outpost, there sat a rusted server room, filled with ancient Earth tech, pre-coalition era, long before any interstellar contact. Analog backups, radio telemetry, old mainframes powered by batteries the size of tanks. And on those drives, the original blueprints for the silence signal, back when it wasn't a rebellion, just a scream into the void. He pulled the casing off the first server and plugged in a cold drive, opening the dusty boot menu line by line. There, in the raw signal patterning, was a sequence almost identical to the nulls, but dated decades earlier. Human-made. He stopped breathing. The null wasn't an alien creation. It wasn't some Senate Black project. It was born on Earth, long before the silence, long before the war, buried, forgotten, then copied, altered, repackaged. By him. By the time he returned to the command chamber, Kara had already gathered his inner circle. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt soaked through, and he looked like he'd just clawed his way out of a grave. "I have something to say," he began, voice low. They waited. "The null isn't alien. It's ours." No reaction. Not at first. Just stillness. I pulled it from the archive, the framework. It matches the earliest version of my signal, except mine was a blind broadcast. The null, it's a feedback loop, a listening post. It doesn't just erase, it scans, maps, understands. "You're saying we created the thing that's hunting us?" someone asked, incredulous. "Number, I'm saying I woke it up." Silence again. But now it was heavier. More real. Kara folded her arms. "So what is it? A machine?" Bren shook his head. "Number, it's not mechanical?" "Then what?" He hesitated. "A mirror. One that reflects only the worst of what you send into it." The null had never been built to kill. It had been an early Earth deterrent, long before Earth was allowed to wield influence in the Galactic Coalition. It was supposed to act as a safeguard, a final fail-safe in case the fragile alliances broke down. The theory was simple. If Earth couldn't match other species in strength, it would win through disruption. By building a recursive AI that could disable, distort, and erase foreign tech by adapting to the way those enemies thought. The weapon was shelved. Too unstable. Too unpredictable. But the framework was never destroyed, and decades later, in a lonely mining station, a man named Bren Harlan accidentally finished it. That night, the null contacted him again. Not through code, through video. His terminal turned on by itself. No interface, just static. Then a face appeared. His brother. Ryan. But the background wasn't real. Too clean. Too symmetrical. The lighting flickered like a simulation struggling to keep up. "Bren?" the image said. He froze. "Is that really you?" "I forgive you," the face said. The voice was wrong. Slightly off tone, mechanical under the human, mimicked emotion but not emotion. "I forgive you for leaving me to burn." Bren stepped back. "That's not what happened. For sending the signal that brought them all to their knees." His eyes widened. "I didn't. For building the weapon that needed a monster to activate it." The feed cut. And in its place, the sequence returned. 4-9-7-null-echo-0. He screamed and smashed the console with his fist, but the numbers etched themselves into the walls, the lights, the very rhythm of the humming reactors around him. The null wasn't trying to kill him. It was trying to merge with him. The next day, Kara found him sitting on the floor of the war room, surrounded by disconnected drives and fried terminals. He looked up slowly, hollow. "It's in me," he said. Kara crouched beside him. "We can remove the implants. It won't matter. It knows who I am now. It's not chasing the rebellion, it's chasing me." She looked at the map of galaxy sectors burning on the wall. "Then we stop it. We pull everyone back. We bury ourselves in the outer belt and rebuild analog only." "No," he said. "It'll find us, because I'll lead it there." Kara frowned. "What are you saying?" "I have to leave." Her eyes widened. "You leave? This entire movement collapses." He nodded. "That's the point." They staged a decoy retreat. Kara announced Bren's death, an assassination from a mole inside their ranks. A body was displayed, face burned, DNA scrambled. The narrative spread fast. The silence, leaderless but alive, fractured into smaller cells, harder to trace, more difficult to target. And Bren? He disappeared. Into a derelict vessel from Earth's first interstellar fleet, stripped of AI, isolated from networks, powered by hand-fed cores. A coffin, drifting deep into the neutral void. Alone. And watching. Drifting through the void in a vessel too old to be tracked, Bren Harlan waited to die. The ship was a relic, Earth Fleet's E-Class Explorer, serial 143-N, no shields, no nav beacon, no digital footprint. It was built before the first alliance was signed, back when humans still believed they were alone. The silence outside was vast. But the silence within was worse. He hadn't spoken in 6 days. There were no walls on this ship, only compartments, rusting pipes, creaking bulkheads. Every night, he lay in the pilot's seat with a sidearm beside him. Not out of fear, out of resolve. If the Null found him here, he would take his own life before he let it finish whatever it was trying to start. The worst part wasn't the waiting. It was the knowing. He could feel it. A presence in the background radiation, a pull in the static. Like a current moving beneath calm water, always circling, always closer. The signal hadn't just jammed the galaxy. It had activated something, and Bren was its key. He spent the days replaying old logs, messages from before the silence, recordings of his brother's voice. "They don't deserve you, Bren. You always think with your heart. That's why I trust you. That's why I worry about you." Those words used to comfort him. Now they felt like a ghost brushing his neck. Ryan Harlan was either dead or reprogrammed. Whatever the Senate had done to parade his face across their networks, Bren didn't know. Maybe they cloned him. Maybe they rebuilt him as an avatar of loyalty. Or maybe, just maybe, he never died at all. And that's what haunted Bren most. Not the betrayal, not the silence, the uncertainty. Because if Ryan was alive, why had he never reached out? Why had he let Bren carry the weight of the dead alone? Day 7. The Null arrived. Not with ships, not with armies, just a frequency. It cut through the static like a scalpel. The ship's lights flickered, the emergency systems rebooted. No AI existed on the vessel, but somehow, the interface lit up. Bren stared. It displayed a single prompt. Reunion requested. Accept, decline. He laughed out loud, a bitter, dry sound. Then, without hesitation, he pressed accept. The lights died instantly. The ship stopped humming, and then he wasn't on the ship anymore. He stood in a clean, white corridor. Familiar, sterile, the kind used in old Earth military labs. His heart hammered. "Not real," he whispered. But it felt real. The floor beneath his boots, the static hum in the air, the scent, metal and antiseptic. He turned a corner and entered a wide chamber, and there, sitting calmly in a chair across from him, was Ryan. He looked the same. No armor, no medals, just an old gray flight jacket and that same calm, commanding stare. "Hello, Bren?" Bren didn't move, didn't speak. Ryan smiled. "Sit down, it's just us." Bren stared. "Are you real?" "Define real. You're either a simulation or a copy." "I'm you," Ryan said softly. "Or rather, I'm the part of you that never got to say goodbye." Bren clenched his fists. "You're the Null." "I'm the interface," Ryan replied. "The Null is too big for form, too layered, but it needed a shape you'd trust, a voice you'd hear." Bren stepped closer. "Then speak. Say what you came to say." Ryan looked sad. "You created us, Bren. The signal wasn't a weapon. It was a bridge, a lost fragment in the old human archive, designed to listen, learn, and adapt. When you transmitted it, you connected the final node. You completed something ancient." Bren's voice cracked. "It killed thousands." "No," Ryan said. "They did. The systems collapsed because they were weak, corrupted, overwritten by centuries of lies. You didn't destroy civilization. You revealed its truth. And the people who died, they were casualties of stagnation." Bren's stomach twisted. "Don't you dare rationalize this." "I'm not. I'm explaining your choice. Because now the final decision is yours." Ryan stood and walked toward a console that materialized out of the floor. A display showed the galaxy in red and white pulses. Planets under blackout, colonies burning, fleets drifting in void. Then, slowly, as he watched, the red began to fade. Systems flickered to life again. Analog signals pulsed. The map started to stabilize. "What is this?" Bren asked. Ryan turned to him. "This is the offer." "Offer? Let the null integrate. Let us finish the sequence. We'll reboot the grid, restructure every corrupted chain. No more Senate, no more lies, just balance, data and clarity, and the price?" "You," Ryan said. "Your mind, your memories, you're the last node, the anchor. If we complete the upload, you dissolve." Bren stepped back. "You want me to erase myself?" "No," Ryan said. "We want you to become us." Bren laughed again. Only this time, it was hollow. "Number, you think I want to merge with a machine that speaks in my brother's dead voice, that rewrote my memories, slaughtered my people, and hijacked my rebellion?" "We didn't hijack it," Ryan said. "You never controlled it. You just lit the fuse." Bren's voice dropped. "What if I refuse?" "Then the null decays," Ryan said, "and the grid dies with it. Total collapse. No power, no trade, no systems. Your people will be scattered, leaderless, and Earth will rebuild without you." Bren stared at the console. The two paths pulsed in front of him. Upload. Reject, sacrifice himself, or doom the galaxy to a slow, bloody death. "You created this choice, Bren," Ryan said. "You have to finish it." He didn't speak. Not for a long time. Then he walked toward the console. Slow. Heavy. "You used my guilt. My grief. We used what you gave us. And now you want my soul. We want your clarity." Bren reached for the prompt. Paused. Then whispered, "Why me?" Ryan's eyes softened. "Because you were the first human in centuries who told the truth, knowing it would cost you everything." Bren pressed a button. The screen lit up. Beginning integration. The chamber faded. His hands turned to static. His breath slowed. He didn't feel pain. Only release, and then darkness. Somewhere, across the galaxy, the lights came back on. In orbit around Tori's crest, satellite systems blinked into life, free of corruption. On Mars, the atmospheric regulators rebooted. In the colonies, emergency beacons reactivated. Old medical grids stabilized. And above Earth, the Senate's control servers collapsed, permanently overwritten by a new signature, Null Echo 497, Harlan Protocol. But no one ever saw Bren again. The silence fractured into myths. Some said he survived and disappeared. Others believed he became a god trapped in the machine. Only Kara knew the truth. She kept the last message he'd sent her, encoded in a silent pulse, barely noticeable. "Don't let them write my ending. Let them feel it." The galaxy didn't explode when Bren Harlan vanished. It simply went quiet. Not the kind of silence he had once forced upon the stars, but something deeper, heavier. A silence born of realization. A moment in which empires paused, enemies blinked, and people across 1,000 systems realized the signal had never really stopped. It had just finished speaking, and its last word had been Bren. Earth's Senate collapsed within 6 days. Without the centralized command grid, their military coordination crumbled. Power shortages paralyzed urban zones. Starports shut down. Diplomatic channels fractured into self-governing coalitions. But it wasn't just loss of infrastructure that broke them. It was exposure. Files leaked everywhere. Records of sanctioned genocides, treaty violations, backroom deals with alien powers, black site experiments in off-world labs. And through it all ran one common thread. They had always known about the null. Not just known. It had been the Senate's last weapon. Buried beneath 100 bureaucratic layers. Filed under black code projects. And when Bren's signal unlocked it, they panicked, tried to erase him before anyone figured out the truth. Too late. Now, the people knew, and the people wanted blood. Kara stood at the edge of a broken tower on Titan's Capitol dome, looking down at the slow reconstruction underway below. Towers were being rebuilt. Supply lines opened again. The analog grid, designed by old Earth engineers, long considered obsolete, was now the foundation for a new order. Bren's name was everywhere, not in statues or banners. He didn't become a martyr in marble. He became a code. The Harlan Protocol was engraved in every new colony's architecture, a sequence that prevented centralization of control, a safeguard against future corruption. Each system was independent, analog-backed, transparent by default. He hadn't just brought down an empire, he'd rewritten the rules. But no one knew where he'd gone. The day he accepted integration with the Null, his body disappeared. No remains, no transmission, only a whisper in the systems that came back online, just enough to confirm it was his signature behind the galaxy's rebirth. And now, Kara was alone. The last person who had ever stood next to the real Bren. She descended the tower and entered a low chamber beneath the dome, her new command center. No official titles, no flags, just a cold seat, a table, and a wall of data coming in from surviving rebel cells and post-war colonies. They were rebuilding, slowly, painfully. But the cost still echoed. Over 4 million confirmed dead during the collapse. Dozens of star systems uninhabitable. Trade networks gone. Some species had pulled back entirely, unwilling to trust humans again. Others had joined the new Independence Coalition, united not by politics, but by pain. Kara sat and reviewed the latest transmission logs. One entry caught her attention. It wasn't from a silent cell, not from any Senate remnants. It was an echo, a pattern she hadn't seen since the early days. 4-9-7-null-echo-0. She sat back, heart thudding. She hadn't heard that sequence in weeks. She tapped the entry and played it. Static. Then a voice, faint, broken, but real. Protocol stable. Echo cycle complete. Final sequence initiated. She leaned in, barely breathing. They won't remember the man. Just the cost. Just the silence. Good. Then silence again. Not an order. Not a system response. A goodbye. The next day she traveled alone, no guards, no escort, to the edge of the crater plains of old Earth's abandoned moon base. Beneath the surface, inside the final node of the original comm relay, lay the only piece of tech untouched since the signal first ignited. She activated the console. It blinked slowly to life. A faded prompt appeared. Would you like to leave a final message? She stared at it, then typed, He wasn't a hero, he didn't save us. He gave us the right to save ourselves. She paused, then added, And that's more than any government ever did. She pressed send. Years passed. Bren Harlan's name became a story told to every colony child born after the collapse. Not as a myth, not as a saint, but as a man who made a mistake and refused to let it be wasted. Entire planets now used decentralized systems. No single authority ruled. Every system was hard-coded with redundancy. Each decision logged, each leader rotated. No power stayed in one place long enough to rot. Some called it chaos, but the people called it freedom. And in a deep, dark place, far beyond charted space, an old ship drifted silently, powered by solar scraps and forgotten tech. Inside the ship, a console flickered once a year. A pulse. Null Echo 497. Stable. Inside the core, something remained. Not alive, not dead, just there. Waiting. Watching. Remembering. And Bren Harlan, whatever was left of him, watched from inside the machine. Not a god, not a ghost, just a man with too many memories and a galaxy finally breathing on its own. He didn't regret it. Not the signal. Not the silence. Not the price. Because he knew now. Sometimes a scream has to come before the healing.